Hi everybody, my name is Larsen. The minor blues progression is a very common progression in jazz, and it's important that you're familiar with it and that you're also really comfortable both in terms of soloing on it and also comping it. In this video I'm going to focus on comping. I'm going to go over two basic sets of chord voicings, and the reason why I'm doing two different sets that you can use as starting points to create some more variation is that there are different sounds. You have different options available when it comes to interpreting these minor chords, and that means that you can use different types of chords and different extensions. The easiest way to think about this is probably to attach each of the sounds to a scale, because a scale is going to tell you what notes you have available to build the voicings, and that's also going to tell you what kind of extensions you have in the chords and what fits together. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, improve the way that you solo, check out some interesting voicings or arpeggios, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. The minor blues that I'm using in this video is in the key of C minor, and we don't really need a lot of chords to play through this progression because we only need a tonic chord, so a C minor chord. So that would be, in this case, this C minor. Then we also have fourth degree, that's an F minor chord. Here I'm using this F minor. And to take me from the C minor to the F minor, then in bar 4 I have a C7, and I'm here playing a C7 altered. That's this C7 flat 9 flat 13 to take me to F minor, back to C minor, and then the final cadence in the blues, where in a major blues you have a 2-5, so in the key of C you would have D minor G7. Here you have the G7, but you have an A flat 7 instead of a 2 chord. So we have an A flat 7 here, and then this G7 flat 9 flat 13. The chord voicings that I'm using for both of these examples are Drop2 voicings. And I'm going to use Drop2 voicings on the top string set because they're sort of really practical and they're easy to use. So they're probably the first ones you want to check out. I'm not really going to go into too much detail about what Drop2 voicings are and how you can practice them. I have another series of videos on that topic, and I'll link to that in the description of this video if you want to dig into that. Since I'm using melodic minor on the chords in this example, then it makes sense also to look at some of the different options that we have available by just using other notes from the melodic minor scale. When I'm making variations on chords and when I'm trying to play comping to get it to sound nice, then I'm mostly thinking about the top note melody that I'm playing. And in this case, of course, if we have this C minor 6, which is what I'm using here, we can also just easily add some variation by just adding the 9 here on top as a melody note, or maybe use the major 7, so the B. Because if I play the C melodic minor scale on the high E string, then I have this scale just from the lowest note available is the F. So F, G, A, B, C, D, E flat, and then back on F. And if I harmonize that with C minor chords, then I'll get this. And of course you can actually repeat this process for the 4 chord. And really what you get is the exact same set of voicings that just moved to another place. So for the F minor, then the first voicing would be this one, and then this one, and then we get the A flat, the B flat harmonized, the C, then the D, the E, and then the F. And you can see that like up here we have these available, which are the same as what I have for the C minor. So it's really just the same row of voicings, just starting somewhere else. The C7 in bar 4, actually you probably already noticed that it's the exact same voicing as the C minor. I'm just moving it up a half step, and that means that we actually can just do the exact same thing with the whole row of chords, and then we have these. What is maybe a little bit less obvious is that for the A flat 7, I'm actually also using melodic minor, and if you look at the A flat 7 here, you can also see that it is the same voicing as what I'm using on the C minor 6. And the melodic minor scale I'm using is, because it's an A flat 7 sharp 11, it's the Lydian dominant scale, and that's the same as E flat melodic minor. And that means that I can just use that row of chords, and then I get this. On the G7, I'm playing a G7 altered. G7 altered is the same as A flat melodic minor. And A flat melodic minor I can of course also just play with the same voicing set that I was already using, and then I get these voicings. The first set of voicings was really based on the melodic minor sound, and as you can tell, we could use melodic minor and melodic minor chord voicings on all the chords in the minor blues. We can't do that for the next one, but then we already have some of them covered because we already did some of them with the melodic minor sounds, so that's going to make that a little bit easier. And here I'm going to work with the Dorian sound and some of the variations that you have available if you're using that as sort of the basic scale that you want to work with for finding some tonic and subdominant chord voicings. In this example, I'm using this C minor 7 with an 11 and with a 9 for the tonic chord, and it can be a little bit difficult to play in terms of being a bit of a stretch. And of course, if you feel this is really difficult to do, then just change the 11 into a normal fifth, and then you have this voicing, which you can probably easily play. But they both sound really nice. Then the voicing on the C7 in bar 4, I'm using this C7, so this is really just a variation on the C7 that I had in the first set of voicings, except now instead of having this D flat, so the flat 9 in the melody, I have a sharp 9. Then the F minor 7 that I'm using for the fourth degree here is this F minor 7 with a 9 and an 11. Then back to the C minor, and on the A flat 7, here we have this A flat 7 with a 13, and then the G7, which is a G7 with a sharp 9 and a flat 5, and then back to the C minor, and then once more the G7. Since I'm using C Dorian as the main sound on my tonic chords here, that means that I'm using essentially the notes of a B flat major scale to create all the chords. And if I take that scale, so if I play that on the first string here, so then we just have F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, and F. And if I harmonize that just using Drop2 C minor chords, then that would be something like this. Of course, I could also go into working through this with the 4 chord and think of it like that. This is not too difficult to check out. I think you anyway want to try and do exercises like this for the F minor chord eventually. I think the other thing that's maybe also important to look at here is that we can actually color these chords in different ways. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on that with these Dorian sounds. And the idea here is that if we look at, so my basic voicing is of course this C minor with an 11 and a 9. Now this is derived from this voicing, so that's the basic C minor voicing in this position. And really what's happening here is that I've sort of substituted the root with a 9 and the fifth with an 11, and then I have that voicing. And that's of course, you can make different versions of this, so you can have this one, we can add the 9, we can also keep the root there and then just have the 11 here. And another thing you do is to, instead of having a fifth, we can have a 13, which is more sort of a little bit more spicy sound. And then I'd have this C minor with a 13 with the 9 also. And another way of getting that into play, where we have the 11 in there as well, is to have this C minor 11 voicing, and then instead of playing the root, I'll play the 13, then I have this. I'm not going to cover the same idea for the F minor chord in this case, just to keep the video a little bit shorter. And for the dominance, they're still just pulling from the melodic minor sounds. So you will be using the exact same material that we already covered with the melodic minor scale, because the C7 altered is still going to be from D flat melodic minor. The A flat 7 is still a Lydian dominant, so E flat melodic minor, and G7 is of course also still just coming out of A flat melodic minor. The reason that I can keep on publishing videos every week is that I have a community of people supporting me over on Patreon. I'm very grateful for that, and if you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. If you join us over on Patreon, I can also give you something in return for your support. The final example is another chorus on the blues, but then now I'm using some different voicings and a little bit more variation in the melody. I'm working with the melodic minor sound, and in the beginning, so it's kept fairly simple. The first bar is really just this C minor 6 with a 9, then the next part is that, and then I'm just adding some variation by going back to the major 7 in the melody, so really getting that melodic minor sound out there. Then the next part is moving up from the root to the 9. Then we get the C7 altered. First this C7 with a flat 13 and a sharp 9. Then down to the flat 9 and then resolving to the F minor. And then that's just in the next bar repeated twice. And then we move back to C minor. That's really just the same melody with a different rhythm. Then on the A flat 7, it's actually the same movement as I had on the C minor, but I'm just moving up, of course, because it's using these A flat 7 voicings. So, and then on the G7, I've added sort of a small trick that I didn't really talk about. But what I'm doing here is that I have first the G7 also that I had in the very first example, which is just the basic voicing, then the one from the next example, and that's of course a variation on the stuff that we already had, but it creates this really nice counter movement in the two top voices, so like this, and then I'm resolving to this C minor 6 with a 9, and then back to this G7. In this video, I'm working with the Drop2 voicings on a minor blues, but if you want to check out some more information on Drop2 voicings and just see it applied to other sort of basic 251s, I use Autumn Leaves also, and just adding extensions and alterations, then check out this playlist where I have a few videos where I'm really going over all these things for Drop2 voicings. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar and the first time you see one of my videos, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. That's about it for this week. Thank you for watching, and until next week.